Hi, Steve from the Franchising Centre again. I get asked a lot about what's a good return on investment when buying a franchise. So I thought I'd take you through some numbers. And this time we're going to use Access4Lofts, the UK's largest and most successful loft boarding and storage franchise, to just show you the sorts of returns you can expect for your investment in an Access4Lofts franchise. This is, I apologise, going to get quite number heavy, so grab yourself a coffee, get a notepad and buckle up while we go through some numbers. So Access4Lofts is actually a very good example to use for this. It's a one-man, one-van business, but it can be scaled up. So the whole business has been systemized to such a degree that one person can do all the work on their own, but franchisees then have the potential to bring on someone to work with them or to add a second van or a third van. We have 2 franchisees in the network now have 10 vans each, so it's as large as you want to make it. But let's look at the very beginning. One man, one van, operating on their own and doing the typical job that a franchisee would. So the handy thing here is that nearly every job for a customer of Access4Lofts is broadly the same. It's a ladder, a hatch, 10 square meters of boarding, an LED battery operated light. Customer will generally pay on average about £1,000 for that. Now that's not £1,000 that ends up in your pocket, because of course you'll have some costs to come off that. Typically there'll be things like the materials, so that's the ladder, the hatch itself, the boarding, the timber that supports the boarding, the lights and so on. Then you'll have what we would call business operating costs. So they're things like your marketing costs, the cost of your mobile phone, cost of fuel for the van and so on. And the van itself, that's typically on a lease deal, so you will be paying a monthly fee for that as well. So when you take all of those costs away, what you're left with on a typical job is about £300, what we would call operating profit. Now, the bad news is there will be tax to pay on that. Unfortunately, there's not very much we can do about that. But part of the package with an Access4Lofts franchise is an accountancy service, and they will work with you to minimise tax, all legally and correctly, of course, but there are things you can do that make owning your own business slightly more tax efficient than just being a PAYE salaried employee. So taking all that into account, you'll be left with £300 per job before tax. And the good news is those jobs can be easily done in a day, typically 5 or 6 hours. So most franchisees will do 4 or 5 of those per week. So let's take the conservative side of that. Let's say a franchisee is going to do 4 of those jobs at £300 profit each. So £1,200 per week profit. And let's say that you work for 48 weeks of the year. I've assumed you're going to have a few weeks holiday. Some franchisees will take more, some will take less. That's your choice, and that's part of the flexibility of being your own boss. But let's just say you're going to take 4 weeks holiday, so you'll be working 48 weeks. So 48 weeks at £1,200 a week gives you a before tax profit of £57,600. Now, the next question that comes up is, how realistic is that? Are franchisees really earning £57,600 a year? And the answer is yes, that's actually the average, and that's where that figure's come from. There are, of course, franchisees who do a lot more than that. Some franchisees will do 2, 3, even 4 times that much in a year. Top franchisees typically are turning over around about £150,000 per month. But these are much bigger operations, and they didn't start like that. But yes, for a single operator, one person in a van operating on their own, £57,600 is a very reasonable figure. There are, of course, some franchisees that earn less than that, but that's typically their choice. They will decide to either do fewer jobs in a week, or maybe not work as many weeks of the year. Perhaps those holidays are a little bit more appealing. So all of those things are adjustable depending on the sort of income you'd like and the way that you want to run the business. But the important thing is that as a franchisee, you can look at a network, and in this case there's 77 territories operating now, and get some real confidence that these are realistic earnings. So then from your point of view, looking at your investment, franchisees will always get their initial investment back in the first year. And that's what people mean by return on investment. How long does it take to get that back? A franchise with Access4Lofts costs you £29,950. So you're comfortably going to see all of that back in year 1. And when you're comparing franchises, that's a good metric to use. How long does it take to get back the money you've invested? And if that's anything less than a year, then I can tell you that's very rare.